This week, it's all about boondocking, but particularly boondocking with a big rig. Although I think if you're in a small rig or any other type of rig, you're going to get some lessons out of this episode as well. But we're out in the middle of nowhere, boondocking on some public lands. Not nowhere, there's a brewery right there.
There's a
But
brewery right there, which is a great time to do this.
but we are in a big wild piece of land and and Abby just opened up a beverage all over her computer. This is RV Miles.
Oh my goodness.
Chances are you've seen them on the road. That's because Blue Ox designs and manufactures the best towing products in the industry. Just look around. You'll find them on highways, in campgrounds, and anywhere you find people traveling in the great outdoors. From award-winning tow bars and base plates to a full line of weight-distributing hitches, adjustable ball mounts, and now they have fifth-wheel hitches too. With Blue Ox, towing doesn't have to be a drag. Visit BlueOx.com for more information. Harvest Host is a membership that allows RVers to take a rest from the road and enjoy unlimited overnight stays at over 5,100 unique locations in North America, like breweries, farms, attractions, wineries, and much more. Easily plan and book your next RV trip and enjoy over $1,500 in exclusive member benefits by joining Harvest Host. Get 15% off your first year of membership with the code MILES. That's MILES. Go to harvesthost.com to become a Harvest Host member today.
Welcome to episode number 361 of RV Miles. I'm Jason.
And I'm Abby, and we are two RVers who, along with our three boys, Jack, Ethan, and Henry, have been crisscrossing all over North America RVing since 2016. Here at RV Miles, we talk all things RV and outdoors, from industry news to boondocking travel destinations, ways to not open your beer on camera, and so much more.
And the raindrops that just started falling on us. All right, the raindrops have seemed to subsided for a second. So, there, you get little sort of tiny little pockets of rain around here, and then you can get some really big ones. We're in western Wyoming. We're just south of Jackson Hole. We're actually getting ready to move today. This is our last day at this lovely boondocking spot. If you're watching on video, you're seeing a little bit of it in the background. But we are on a piece of public land that is on a reservoir. And it is backed up to our brewery that we haven't visited because we've just loved sitting here on this land so much.
And because we already had this beer. So we were still enjoying some beer we picked up in Park City. So, we just want to enjoy this boondocking spot as much as possible because it truly is one of the prettiest boondocking spots we've ever been at. And it is so quiet.
It is. We're out in the open. It's not totally quiet when the gravel excavators are working. There's a big county gravel pit near us.
But even then, it's not too bad. And that's so infrequent that we hear that. But there's no one around us.
Yeah.
I mean, again, for those who are not watching, we are in this big, wide open space. This is called Palisades Reservoir South Dispersed Camping. We are in this huge space behind us on video that you can see no other rigs behind us. That is the same behind the camera, outside of a couple that are further up the hill. That is the same on the driver's side of the camper, where there is literally no one over there except for an hour ago, one rig finally showed up. We have had all of this to ourselves for the last 4 days.
One of the things about this space that's really cool is that if we didn't have us to ourselves, say this was the middle of July, probably gets a little bit busier around here. This is still a little bit early season. There's room for 300 rigs here.
My gosh, it's like you could host Coachella here for RVs. I mean, it's really amazing. And then we've got we're surrounded by mountains. We are absolutely surrounded by mountains. There is still snow on plenty of them. If you were with us on our live on Monday night, we went live for the whole community. Normally, we're just live with our mile marker members. We went live with the whole RV Miles community, and you may have seen my in real time reaction to the fact that the rain turned to snow while we were on the live. And I was, we'd already had a very cloudy, very rainy day. And then all of a sudden it started snowing and the temperature dropped. But it was so beautiful. The next day we had cloudy, partly cloudy day, but all of this beautiful fresh snow on the mountains around us. And
It's
it's magical.
360 degrees mountains every single direction.
It's
We'd
magical.
probably be on it. It was the heat of the day. It was
It was quite,
bright sunlight when we
yeah.
were setting up, and then we've got this little bit of clouds and rain now. We would probably be sitting on our amazing Sabre sun deck on the side of the RV, except for
Yes.
we can't get a good camera shot on the sun deck.
We
But we would be nice and protected by the awning from the sun. So we had to put the sun deck in, and now we're sitting in the spot where the awning covers. We did this to stay out of the sun, but now we're staying out of the rain, I guess.
Yeah. In the future updates for the 37 RV miles, we're gonna build in a camera mount or something
Yeah.
along the side that would allow us to actually film from the sun deck because it's such an enjoyable space up there. We have spent so much time working and relaxing and just hanging out. All of us at one point or another have been out there utilizing that space, bundled up with blankets or not. Like the temperature's just been all over the
Well,
place this week.
especially like you talked about the heavy rain that we had the other day and
Yeah.
that turned into snow. It made this place very, very muddy. And
Yes,
we
it did.
could still go out on the balcony and, barefoot
Yeah.
and hang out out there even when the sun was out the next day, but the ground was muddy and we could
Yes.
not walk in the mud but still be outside. And that was pretty great.
Yeah, we are really putting this rig through its paces. We will see how it does when we got to get it out of here because we do have to leave here in a little bit.
It's sort of a non-compacted gravel road
Yeah.
out of here.
So the truck is really going to get a workout later this afternoon. It's not bad. It's not bad, and it's not super deep gravel, and we have seen plenty of other cars and even some RVs come through here looking for spots. We've actually seen an excavator come down not far from us. They were doing a little bit of work further down the lane on the reservoir on Monday. So we have seen lots of different equipment come through here. It's not impossible. We've driven the truck out of here many times since we got here. So we'll be fine. Hopefully.
So
Just leave it at that. We got to get out of here one way or the other.
So
So
we've got a couple beverages. We're enjoying our last sort of afternoon outside here before we go to a full hookup campground because our black tank is just about full.
we think it's just about full. But this will probably be, and I'm really trying to soak this up, and then we'll get into talking about boondocking and how you can find a place like this with any size rig. But we do want to talk to some of our big rig friends out there today. But I'm really trying to soak this up because I cannot remember the last time I was RVing and felt almost like we were the only rig on Earth.
Yeah, except for a week ago.
Well, yeah, but I just mean boondocking. I'm sorry. In regards to
Well,
boondocking,
I
I
meant
mean,
that's the
this
last docking site.
yeah, but even still,
Yeah.
we still had, like, I know we've got a couple of rigs, kind of behind us and up on the hill, but Jason, we could walk. I mean, half of the space behind us, if I was to walk that, I would have been up on the rigs that were near us in Utah, right? I could walk I mean, the amount of space we have here is incredible
It's pretty
to
epic.
me.
It's pretty epic.
It feels so peaceful, and so I'm really trying to soak that up before we head over to a full hookups private campground, which is going to have plenty of amenities like uh, endless showers and tanks that we can dump and laundry that I can do and things like that. But you can't beat this. This is what RVing's all about right here.
So we want to dive into a discussion on boondocking. We always get a little apprehensive when we talk about boondocking, whether it's at one of our meetups or whether it's on the podcast, because I think we feel like we're not experts in it. And certainly some of you listening have done much more of it than us. And Many people, this is just how they camp. This is all they do, right?
Hmm.
They never pay for a campground or very rarely pay for a campground. But I always get encouraged when we have an event like we just did, the High Desert Hangout. We had a boondocking discussion, and there's so many people there that just don't know where to start.
They feel apprehensive
They're
about
very
it.
apprehensive. They
Absolutely.
don't know how to find a spot. They don't know about safety. They don't know about things about whether they can leave their rig to go explore, all that sort of stuff. So today we're going to talk about a bit of that kind of stuff, but mainly we're trying to center this around boondocking in a large RV where a 43-foot fifth wheel doesn't
Family
get
of
much larger than
5.
this, and finding spots that you can do it in safely in a rig this size. Of course, if you have a smaller rig, you'll just be all the better off by listening to this conversation. I think you have more options than we do, for sure.
And I will say, so when I was putting this together, the way that we boondock in the 43-foot fifth wheel is very different than the way that we were boondocking pretty much primarily in 2023, almost consistently in our RVing, in our 25-foot ibex. So we have been kind of small, we're big, and I was thinking to myself, it's a very different experience boondocking in this larger rig, especially in shoulder season. So I would say one of the biggest challenges was because the temperature was still dipping pretty low at night, just to make sure that we were still warm without overusing propane, so that we still had propane for cooking and heating water and things like that. And that was a big difference because we didn't have to think a whole lot about that in the ibex because it was such a smaller space,
Yeah,
right?
and
So
we learn things from about this rig. Obviously, there's more space to be heated up, and we've been learning about some of the things that help distribute the heat better. For instance, we've learned that closing the patio up at night,
mhm,
which is really easy to do, makes that wall sort of a big double insulated wall instead of a single pane of glass, and we retain a lot more heat that way. So,
really changes the difference between the temperature in the back
mhm.
flex room with the patio down or patio up. But anyway, so it's a little bit different of a mindset. And I think for anyone, anytime you move from one type of rig to another, there's a huge learning curve. We talked a lot about this at the High Desert Hangout when people would come in and we were giving tours of the rig. It was a huge learning curve for us. It has been a very big learning curve again for us with this RV. Like, because we were coming from 25 feet and we'd gotten really comfortable with that. But even having previously owned 43 feet, this has still been a huge learning curve. And so getting back out into this boondocking and kind of relearning and finding new things about doing this with a big rig has been challenging, but has also been really satisfying because it has paid off with places like this. So,
Interestingly, one of the big apprehensions that people have about boondocking in a large rig, probably the biggest one, is, will I find a place to fit? And interestingly, one of the reasons we're here, we were only supposed to spend a couple nights here, and then we were going to a campground that we had booked, a National Park Service campground. The site was just at or slightly less than the length of our rig. And one of the current concerns was, would we actually fit in that site?
would we?
So interestingly, one of the reasons we're here is actually we feel more comfortable that we'll
Yeah.
fit here than
Yeah.
we would fit in the campsite.
Yeah.
So there's some of those considerations when it comes to a bigger rig.
Yeah. So let's dive in though and go all the way back to the beginning. And you might be asking yourself, okay, well, what are the steps you guys take to find a space like this? And so I want to highlight just 3. There are lots of other options out there, but these are the 3 that we primarily have used consistently throughout our RV life. And the first one is RV Life. So Trip Wizard, that's a huge one. Campendium is another one. And then iOverlander. iOverlander, RV Life, Trip Wizard, and then Campendium. Those are the 3. And we like to go and check each and every one of those because
They all have different stuff.
they all have different stuff. People leave all different
Yep.
kinds of reviews. It's just really helpful to really vet a place that you're going to. The bigger you are, I will say, a little bit more work has to go into this.
Yeah, you can go on the actual reviews of places and read how long of a rig people stayed in and what their thoughts. So one of the things that we did when we found this site was we saw on RV Life or Campendium, whichever one it was, the listing, and it had reviews, and then we went and read the reviews, and some of the reviews said, oh, there's room for as large of a rig as you want and as many of them as you want in here. And that was an accurate review, and that was one of the reviews that made it comfortable for us to decide to come here.
When it comes to boondocking or any type of campsite where you're kind of pushing the limit of, is it length, or can I get through the actual campground itself to my spot? A check and a check and a recheck and a recheck, and trying to access as many resources as you can will not only give you the information you need to be more informed about the space you're going to, it'll give you the peace of mind going into it. And then again, you should pay that information forward. So, like when we leave here, we will make sure to share some pictures and leave a little bit of detail about our stay so that others can come and
Yeah,
have that information
'cause
and feel empowered as well.
I think the last review for this place was from last fall.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, is it's really helpful to see reviews that are current. Even if one was left 3 years ago, it might not be current anymore. We know stuff on public lands changes a lot. iOverlander is a really interesting app, and we haven't used it much on this trip, but we used it extensively on the whole Baja to Alaska
Mhm.
route. In Baja, there were a lot of places, not just a few, a lot of places that were in the iOverlander app that weren't on Google Maps that
Yes.
we stayed at, like like a legitimate campground.
So iOverlander is a bit more
It's a bit more
overlanding, right?
overlanders, but
It's definitely geared
yeah,
more towards
smaller.
smaller
Yeah.
rigs. We're talking places that you're gonna work real hard to get to, but the payoff is gonna be spectacular. But RVers can gain a lot of
Yeah.
insight from that as well. So don't write it off. Definitely it's one worth looking at. You do have to, I feel like with iOverlander, you do have to massage it a little bit more,
It's a
kind of.
little clunky.
It's a little clunky. Certainly, RV Life and Campendium, they're much more refined, and I think more RV friendly. But again, it's about becoming as comfortable and as knowledgeable about the place you're going to. So when we're checking those sites and we have something in particular in mind, what are some keywords that we're looking for? What are some, you know, points that we want to know about that space? And for us is we don't want to go really far off of a paved road. We still
Yeah.
want to have that feeling of being boondocking, but we also know this rig's particular limits. We know that we don't want to be taking it down something filled with potholes and incredibly bumpy,
Washboard type road.
half a
Yeah.
mile, things like that. We do want to try and stay as close to a paved access road as possible. So we're looking for keywords like that. We're looking for people like with this space. Oh, it's not too far off the main road, and the gravel road coming in is pretty easy. That was a really consistent comment. I think sometimes people have different definitions of easy. I might be a little less generous when I leave a review and just, let people know, like, it's all gravel, it's got some washboard, there are definitely some potholes. You're gonna want to be mindful of all of that as you're coming in, but it's not long. It's a very short span of road that you're gonna do that on, very manageable. We're looking for um fairly even road to get to the spot, like going back to that again, Jason, we don't want a ton of washboard. We don't want it absolutely rutted out or washed out. We want to find roads that, again, a 43-foot fifth wheel that's maybe not totally designed for this can still do this.
Yeah.
So from there, we want to hear people talk about, is it a fairly big open space? Like, how easy can we kind of manipulate this rig into the space and then have the space, the width to get out of it too?
Or if it's a space with a lot of individual sort of pull off types for
Yeah.
individual sort of campsites, how many of them are there? Are those big enough for us to do a full turnaround in? Because usually, yeah, once you get to one, then you're gonna have to come back out, right? Um, and what do we, what is our sense of how many different places there are to camp there? Because one of our biggest concerns, and a lot of people's biggest concerns, is, am I going to get a spot when I get there?
Right.
Is there going to
Right.
be enough room for my rig and all the other rigs that are there? And when I arrive, is it going to be sold out, for a lack of a better term?
Yeah. Now, so we've boondocked twice so far on this 8-week road trip. We did a place called McCoy Flats in Utah, just outside of Vernal. And then we've been here. Did we maybe push the rig a bit to get into the space at McCoy Flats? Yeah, maybe. So when we
Again, two of us would say different things in the review. I think it was fine. I think it was fine. But we did push it. I'm willing to push it. You're a little more apprehensive about pushing it.
I want
I'm
to take
willing
it
to give
home.
it a shot.
I would like the rig to go home. I would like to be able to
Well, I
stay.
would too.
So I am a little bit more conservative. So obviously with this one, when we went to look at this space, I was paying a little bit more to tell me about how you got into the campground or into the spot. Tell me about how you got out of it. Like, I was looking for a little bit more because we had read really good things about getting to McCoy Flats, and it was a nice paved road until you wanted to veer off to a boondocking spot. But we didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the actual layout of the spots and this great pull through site that we had, and y'all have probably seen some of the pictures, and obviously you saw us sitting there if you watched episode 359. We 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 worked hard for that spot. I'll just leave it at that. We worked hard for that spot.
But at any point, we could have backed our way out and gone
100%.
to one that was just closer to the
100%.
road, and it was fine and easier.
And the dragging of the drop frame was only a rock. It wasn't the actual ground. It was just a rock that I kicked out of the way, and then we were no longer dragging, and it was fine. But so this one we wanted to be just a little bit chiller. So we were looking for some keywords in the reviews that would give us a big, again, we have this enormous amount of space, fairly flat level space, to turn this big old fifth wheel around and start the gravel climb up to the brewery. So, it's stuff like that. So that's kind of what we're looking for in our research for a space.
We're also looking for options.
Yes.
So we might find a space that seems great, but you just never know until you get there. It might be closed, might be full of rigs, and you can't get in. You might just not feel comfortable with it. So we like to have backup options. That backup option, we hope, if we're planning on boondocking, a different boondocking spot, but it might be a local campground. It might be, it might even be like a Walmart or a rest area for the night.
Harvest Host is a great option for, in fact, this brewery, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but just to add to that, the brewery that's actually behind the camera is a Harvest Host.
They got an amazing
location.
location.
Is banger. And we have seen Harvest Hosts up there. We have seen RVers up there taking advantage of it. So we knew that was an option. The campground, there's 3 campgrounds in town. We're heading to one of them when we're done here. So we knew that we had options. We also knew, and if I can add on to that, was that we timed it to come in on a Sunday. And I think that timing is everything with some of the more popular spots. When we were in Vernal, we came in on a Friday and we tried to get there early on Friday, but it was already quite busy there. Like, all of the designated spots.
This was a topic of conversation at the boondocking chat at the hangout. That pretty much the consensus was that the busyness of boondocking locations is very similar to the busyness of campgrounds. You can generally expect that people are traveling and moving on Sundays and Mondays, and that things are going to fill up and get busy on Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yep.
So you do want to, if you're concerned about the availability of a spot, try to move sort of early week and try to get to some of those places a little earlier in the day. So maybe you do catch somebody leaving.
Yeah, and today is Thursday. We've already seen a rig come in. I suspect if we had stayed another day, we would probably start to see a few more come in as well. That's pretty normal. So that's something to consider too when you are doing your advanced planning for boondocking is when are you going to get here? Because in some respects, like with our experience at McCoy Flats, the Sabre 37 RV miles was only going to fit in so many of
Yeah.
those spaces, and I think we may have gotten the last one
Yeah.
when we showed up.
Let,
So
let's um let's talk though for a second about the types of lands that are usually available to boondocking because I think that's where people get a little confused and concerned. So
sure.
generally, the vast majority of boondocking in the U.S. is on Bureau of Land Management land. Bureau of Land Management is the largest landholder in the U.S. It's a federal agency that holds just large swaths of land, and most of it is available for you to camp on. And then U.S. Forest Service. The U.S. Forest Service also has a ton of land, and they allow and have space for a lot of boondocking. Through both of those agencies, you can get something called a motor vehicle use map. You can actually stop at a ranger station. They'll give you one. They can talk to you. You can talk to them about places to camp and the best places to stop, especially if you're in a forest. A lot of U.S. Forest Service land isn't actually forest, but a lot of it is. And if you're actually in a forest, sometimes it is just sort of little single campsites.
Mhm.
And they're a very great resource because they want you to camp in the good spots. They don't want you to disturb the land or anything like
Right. They
that.
don't
So
want you to make a new spot if you
they're
can't help
right.
it.
And they're going to tell you what's muddy and what's not and all that sort of stuff. So you can do that. You can call them. You can get the motor vehicle use maps online. You can use an app called Avenza Maps that has all the maps on them, and it's sort of a great sort of interface. But you can get them for free from all the different websites as well. And that's generally where we're going. Now there are lots of other sort of options or other sort of land agencies or some state land agencies, and then there's ways to dip your toes in the water, like something like Harvest Host. Harvest Host is a really great gateway to
Mhm.
boondocking because it's kind of like you've got a reserved spot. You know you can get there. You're not worried about whether you have access. Somebody's giving you permission to head there. A trick with Harvest Host that a lot of people don't realize is it's not just breweries, wineries, farms, and stuff like that. There are a lot of people that own like 100 acres of land and they just allow you to camp there. And usually they might ask for you to leave a donation.
Well, and now
And
you
that's
have
it.
Boondockers
Yeah.
Welcome as
Yeah.
well. So you've got that access too. And the nice thing about a Harvest Host as a gateway into more traditional boondocking is there are so many photos and people are incredibly good about reviewing in Harvest Hosts. And so you can go and you can look at the spots, you can see the road. A lot of times the businesses will give you a nice aerial shot of like the land and circle for you where they would have you go so that you really get a very comfortable idea of how you're going to get into that spot. I think it's like Jason said, it's a really great gateway into boondocking for people that feel a little bit nervous about doing this and can I get into that spot or how are my batteries going to do, what is it going to be like and we're at the point now even with Harvest Host where you can have extended stays beyond just the one night. So there are so many resources out there. Just if you are lucky enough to be able to have your rig in your driveway or in a dedicated spot at home, you can test out boondocking that way too. Go out, fill everything, fill up your fresh water, run off your batteries and your solar and just stay out there for a couple days. See
You
how
can
you
also
do.
go to an actual campground and just don't hook up
Yep.
and see
Yep.
what you can do just not hooked up. You do the big thing we like to say every time we have a conversation about boondocking is that you don't have to have all the solar, all the batteries,
Nope.
all the little tips and tricks about water saving, all that sort of stuff is all great to learn. But if you just think about it like it's a very fancy tent and you limit your usage of all those things as you would in a tent, then you can sort of get a sense of how long that you can stay and do this.
We have boondocked with no solar, with a generator only, no generator, and just the straight up batteries that came with the rig. We have boondocked with a little bit of solar, and now we're boondocking with a lot of solar and a lot of battery. I would say that people would call this some pretty bougie boondocking we've been doing. We have wanted for nothing. I mean, we watched the Pope like, be announced.
Go Chicago.
Go Chicago.
They-
So, I mean, but we have run the microwave.
Yeah.
We have,
And
we have lived a pretty normal life here.
You can certainly get to that point where you go to a place like ABC Upfitters, who outfitted us with this awesome Mastervolt system that allows us to do that. And if the sun's out, we essentially have unlimited power. We had a really cloudy day yesterday.
Today's a little cloudy.
And didn't get a lot of sun yesterday, but we've been able to do pretty much everything we want to do, including the toaster, the microwave, the coffee maker, and all that
I
sort of
did
stuff.
use the toaster
Those things
today.
draw a lot of power, but you don't need to do that.
No.
It has gotten a little bit harder since the advent of the DC fridges and the disappearance of the propane fridges.
Yeah.
A lot of people
R.I.P.
love that the propane fridges are gone, and they did have their issues. They were smaller. They were more expensive for the manufacturers to put in. They made RVs more expensive, and when one went bad, it was expensive to replace. The DC fridges don't use as much power as the older type of residential fridges, the kind that you have in your house.
Sure.
But we're often put in RVs. They're rarely put in RVs anymore. Now, pretty much everybody does DC fridges. You can get full residential size. They'll say like residential type DC fridges, which is like what we have now. They can use a decent bit of power, not as much as a regular residential fridge, but they use power.
Regularly.
They use a decent amount of power. So it is a little bit harder than back when we had the Pioneer with the propane fridge, which was our sort of biggest battery user at that time, especially when you're just trying to use it like a tent.
Well, yeah, because we treated it as tent
You
camping.
still have your fridge, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would suggest people do if they do want to try to spend a little bit more time, a couple nights, just upgrade your batteries. Just, if your rig came with 2 cheap wet cell batteries, put 2 100 amp hour lithium batteries in there, or get one bigger one or something like that. And just doing that without the solar or anything else will get you some more time out there. Even if you have to pop your generator on every now and then to charge them up if you travel with a generator. But at this point, the money you spend on a generator, you can spend on another battery, which is nice.
More in a moment, but first, if you're like us, you absolutely need internet on your travels. And the sponsor of today's video is a great internet solution for travelers. It's a cellular device that works on multiple carriers from a company called TravelFi. TravelFi allows remote workers or anyone on the move really reliable internet access that allows you to move around freely. You don't have to have a permanent location at all to set it up. It's a small, compact device with no contracts and no commitments. You just pay for the months you use, and it just works really well, really quickly, really easily. And if it isn't working for you, they have a US-based call center to help you troubleshoot. TravelFi allows you to stream, work, and play on the go, whether you need internet in your RV, your cabin, even your hotel room. You can get internet in so many different places thanks to their multi-carrier network, and you can browse and work in confidence and comfort. When you go to their website and use the code RVMiles15, you can get 15% off your device order. Again, no contracts, no commitments. You just pay for the months you're using it for. If you're not traveling in the winter, you don't have to pay for it in those months. There's a link in the description below, or you can go to travelfi.com. That's TRAVLFI.com. There's no E. TRAVLFI.com, or go to the link in the description and use code RVMiles15 for 15% off. This episode is sponsored by the folks at RV Life. The RV lifestyle is about community, and the RV community is at the heart of RV Life. RV Life recently celebrated the 1 millionth trip planned with RV Life Trip Wizard, their excellent trip planning tool for RVers, featuring all the trusted reviews, pictures, and tips from their RV Life campground site. RV Life also features several blog sites and over 20 additional RVing forums to serve the RV community. community. All this experience and community feedback come together to help create a fantastic RV trip planner and mobile navigation tool collectively called RV Life Pro. RV Life has marked a milestone of over 3 billion miles traveled using RV Life Pro, counting both the planned RV trips and ad hoc navigation within the included RV Safe mobile app. Take 25% off RV Life Pro at the link in the description for this episode.
So we're going to get back into this, but you might notice that maybe if you're watching this, the beers have disappeared. Well, that's because we just spent the last 40 minutes talking to all of you while it wasn't being recorded.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason the recording stopped. Also, we kept getting rained on, so we did have to move a little bit under the awning.
I can only laugh at this point.
It's fun stuff.
10 minutes ago, I wasn't laughing. Now I'm trying to laugh about it because it was, look, we told nobody liquid gold for 40 minutes. And now what you're going to get is probably more like a bronze.
Okay.
So,
We'll do our best.
we're going to try to recreate everything we did, that magic.
It was rehearsal.
It was, yes, you're right. It was dress rehearsal. It was an invited it was preview. This is opening night. Here we go. So we're going to get back into this list. And once we've found a spot, we're doing the Google Earth, we're reading more reviews, we're having our backup options like we talked about. So what are some things, though, that we like to do before we arrive, before we get to the boondocking spot, or before we even take out on the road heading for the spot? Well, the first is we want to make sure that our black tank and our gray tank is completely empty. The only thing we want registering as full or anywhere near full is our fresh tank. We want that nice and topped off, nice and full, but we really want to show up boondocking with our galley, with our gray, with our black. We want all of that to be nice and empty because managing tanks means you get to stay at your boondocking location longer. Now, Jason is going to tell you that he likes to put a little bit of water in the black tank before we get there.
A decent amount of water, actually. You put a good at least 5 gallons, if not 10, depending on the size of your tank.
Why we're leaving today?
No,
is that what you're saying?
You have to have it in there
because the black tank is like ready for us.
If you don't have water in your tank already, when people flush, they should be holding the flush down for a good 10, 15 seconds.
Right.
I mean, a good decent amount of time to put a good amount of water in the tank. So my system is really to put about 10 gallons in our 40-gallon tank and say, okay, that's that water. And that way when people flush, they can just flush quickly. And I don't have to think about that at all. And then it already has, the tank treatment in it and everything like that. So that there's never anything building up. There's no sludge, anything like that. If you start off with no water in your black tank and you just flush as quick as possible, it's going to be a lot of solids in your tank and a lot of toilet paper, a lot of stuff that sort of piles up.
So we have managed to make it pretty much 5 days as 5 adults, not leaving the campground by managing the tanks. This is a personal choice. Some people will continue to put toilet paper into the black tank while they're boondocking. Others would prefer to put as much of the toilet paper as they can into a trash can or something. We have done both.
Less toilet paper means less need for water.
Absolutely. When we were in the Ibex, we had this stainless steel sort of diaper genie that we used that was amazing, and it was worth every penny we paid for it. And all toilet paper went into that.
Well, not all. We didn't put the grossest toilet paper in that. So that's sort of a decision you can make, right?
We did say if you need to let go of that toilet paper quickly. Now, look, we didn't have this in the first take.
See,
look, you're getting liquid gold all of a sudden again. Well, we did say if you let go of that toilet paper quickly, that toilet paper belongs in the black tank. Everything else can go into the diaper genie, which contained the smell, and it worked great. Other things we do, depending on your battery system and your solar system in the rig itself, even with what we have, even with our Master Vault system, We like to make sure that everything is topped off. So the laptops are charged, the phones are charged, the Kindle is charged, anything that needs a charge and you're going to use pretty frequently, the camera, the batteries, all of that. Although clearly that didn't work out well for us on this episode, but have all of that stuff charged when you get to the campground. If you're somewhere where you're plugged in and you've got that power, use it so that when you get here, you're not using all that power right off the bat, especially if you run into some cloudy days. When we first got here, we showed up with a full battery bank, thank goodness, because the first 36 hours, there was no sun. We had nothing. So we were all the way down to about 30%. I mean, we really managed our batteries, and our batteries are great. But by the time we got sun on rolling into essentially our third day, we were down to 30%, and that was rolling in, making sure that we had all of our devices charged. So just to be on the safe side, if you've got work, if you've got school, if you have things that you're going to use regularly, charge them up before you get to the spot. Same goes with your generator, right? And your
Yeah,
propane.
make sure you have everything full. Your gasoline for your generator, your propane full, and then all the things that you would need to do that would use water, do those things before you head out. So
Yeah, don't show up
that's
here with dishes in the
don't,
sink.
which is something we've made the
We
mistake of doing before.
we did it the last
And
place.
everybody should shower last thing, not the night before, that morning. We all shower so that
Yeah.
we know that we can go longer without showering, especially with 5 of us. If there's 2 of you using a large fresh tank, it's probably not as big of a deal, but for the 5 of us, it's a little bit harder for us to have any sort of decent amount of showers,
Yes.
if any.
I mean, you can imagine the first thing that will happen for at least 3 of us when we arrive at our full hookup campground here in a little bit. There are probably 2 of us here who do not care that they have not showered this week.
Listen, a washcloth with some soap on it goes a long way.
Dry shampoo is your friend. We are not dirty. We just have not taken a shower in the traditional sense. And we did a lot of this. We're pretty well versed in this aspect of this from Baja to Alaska. I mean, I think the whole month we were in Alaska, there might have been like 2 or 3 real showers that happened, maybe 4, and most of the time they weren't with hot water. They were pretty cold showers. So, it is possible to manage your tanks that way. Do though shower the day of that you are leaving, if it is possible, the day that you are leaving for your boondocking spot. Stock your fridge. That's another one I have on here. Don't cram pack it, but stock it up and stock it up with boondocking friendly meals. Like, we're not going to get a ton into that. That could be absolutely its own episode. But meals that are easy, tacos, sandwiches, even like just pasta is kind of an easy thing really quick to cook up.
Not just easy because you don't want to use a ton of propane or you don't want to have a lot of heat in your RV when it's hot and you can't run the air conditioner, but easy on the cleanup. So you're
Yeah.
not using a lot of water to do a lot of cleanup. So like Abby just said, sandwiches for lunches is pretty much our everyday
Yeah.
lunch for boondocking.
Fresh off those crumbs on the plate, and that plate can be used again. It's
Yeah.
totally fine. And we like to, depending on the season that we're boondocking now, we've been in shoulder season here in Wyoming, and it's still getting down into, close to freezing every night. And, the temperature will jump up and it'll get a little warm during the day, but we have been able to cook inside and still be really comfortable. But utilizing outdoor cooking, be that at a fire pit or your Blackstone or your camp stove, or maybe if you're like us with the 3 wood burning fire pits that you have brought with you because someone needed to test them out on the
Didn't
road.
cook on any of them.
Didn't cooked on a single one, but we did make a video on them that's probably out by the time that you're watching.
Maybe.
this
I don't know.
podcast.
We're running out of time.
Time really quick. The campground's already called and asked what time we're coming over today. So, it's fine. It's fine. But things like that help kind of not only keep dishes down when you can do one pot meals, like a nice big one pot thing on the Blackstone, easy cleanup, things like that. It just helps manage tanks. It keeps heat down depending on the time of year that you're boondocking. And it just makes life a little bit easier for all of you. That's the whole point of boondocking, is it's supposed to be easy and just chill, and you're unplugging from the world as much as you can. And so that is kind of a lot of what we do to get ready. So now let's say we're here, it's time, we've arrived, we're at the boondocking location, and here are a couple things that we like to do when we first arrive. Now, we want to scout an area. when we arrived here, when we arrived at McCoy Flats near Vernal, we scouted where we were going to go. If we were in the Ibex, we probably wouldn't scout to the extent
Yeah.
that we do in the 43-foot fifth wheel. And that is just because the Ibex was a little bit, it just was made a little like for this.
Yeah,
So
it had independent suspension and it was short. But if you are in something big or small, it's still nice to just stop at the entrance to the area and go scope it out. There are lots of different ways you can scope it out. You can go on foot, of course, that's the easiest. You can get your bike out and ride your bike around. We have a drone with us. We can throw the drone up and we can send that in to scout out for us.
as long as you're allowed to
Yeah.
fly the drone, you need to make sure that that is okay. If that's something you want to utilize, you need to make sure that you're in an area where it's a
Of course.
drone zone.
But at worst case scenario, we could also drop the trailer and drive the truck in to find the site that we want to stay at. Sometimes it's not as visible as a place like this. You're having to drive up a road and find little individual sites in different places. We can go see what's available. But you always want to just avoid going down a blind road that might not have a turnaround on it, or might have big ruts, or might have a tree down on it, anything like that. You want to be really careful about that.
And you want to consider not only how you're going to get into that spot, but how you're going to get out of it. So when we arrived here, we stopped up at the top of the hill by the brewery, and Jason and I walked down, and we walked the several different roads that kind of encompass this large grassy area here. And we looked at all of the different entrance points and what would be the best entrance point for us to get this 43-foot fifth wheel in. And then we also looked at, we're looking at, oh, look, there's a fire ring over here. It looks like some people have done, there are kind of some fire rings all around that sort of like give you a clue of like this, if you want to go over there. And what we were looking at was, okay, we can come in this particular direction, but look, this is a great spot to stop at because look at how well we can loop around to come out the same way without making too much of an impact on the land.
Yeah, in
right?
general, we're looking for something that has been an established campsite, and that's very common in boondocking areas where there are sites that are just an established spot where you can tell somebody might have a fire ring there, but you might see tire tracks and stuff. So we're not creating all sorts of new spots. We're not trampling all sorts of vegetation. This area happens to be. This is really the bed of a reservoir. This will fill up sometimes of the year. So this is not an area that we're ever destroying no matter where we are because it's going to get full of water at some point.
It will not fill up while we're here. Let's be clear about that.
But that's something to be considering about.
It
If you're camping near a river or you're camping particularly in the desert and you see a wash, you don't want to camp in that wash
No.
because that's where water has been before. And a rainstorm 10 miles away could fill that up.
We did some beach camping one time back in 2021, boondocked some beach camping. This is when we were in the Pioneer. We had nothing but the batteries that came with it. So it was like tent camping. And we had done a little scoping out before we picked a spot. We had looked at what clearly looked like high tide. We'd actually been staying at a campground right there on the beach, and we'd seen high tide a couple times. And we picked a spot we thought was back far enough. And it wasn't. It wasn't. High tide
I
came
mean,
right
it
to our door.
was. We were fine.
But high tide came to our door.
High tide came to the feet and tires of our RV. When you
That
say
is our door.
When you say our door, it sounds like
I
water
don't
was
mean
up to the door bottom.
No,
It was
no.
definitely not.
I
It
just mean
touched our
It
tires.
came to our RV. Like
Yes.
it touched the RV. It came
Now,
like the line
but
was,
that's
right
a
there.
great example, though, of something that you can do if you're worried about this or if you just want to find the best spot. Camp at a campground that is right nearby. Go scope the site out in your truck or your vehicle that you tow with you if you have one, and then you can be comfortable going to the site the next day or whenever without having to worry about going and scoping it out and stuff, and you know that you've got something available there for you.
Couple things more to consider when you get to the site or you're picking out your site is tree cover. If you're needing to make sure that you've got ample solar, you want to make sure you're not somewhere where the trees are going to cover all that up.
Or if you want to hide from the sun because it's too hot and you don't have solar and you want to just be under the trees, that might be a
Yep.
better option for you.
You also want to consider where you're pointing your fridge. You want to kind of try to keep that, like if the fridge is in the slide or up against whatever wall it's up against on the rig, you want to kind of point that away from the sun as much as possible because that will keep the heat off of it, which will keep it from turning on as
So
much.
generally towards the north.
Yeah.
But if it's cold out, maybe you want to point your the most windows you have towards the sun.
Yeah. There's a lot of little things like that to consider when you get to the site. Now, we didn't have to consider too much about that here because it's shoulder season and the weather is kind of all over the place. It was more about how can we position the sun deck to have the most epic view. That's what we were most concerned with when we got to the site. So really, it's all seasonal and it kind of just depends on the environment in which you're boondocking in. So now we're here. We've arrived. We've found our path. We've gotten to our spot. Everything's down. We're setting up. What are a few things that we try to be mindful of when we are boondocking to ensure that we leave it better than we found it, but that also we can stay as long as possible? And of course, that's managing tanks. For us, the biggest one with that means that we're limiting showers.
Everybody, though, is going to have one thing that is sort of the thing that limits them
Yes.
the most. And for us, I guess it would be the fresh water if we were showering.
Yes.
But because we're not really showering here, we're not too concerned about the fresh water as much. The black water is the first thing that's going to run out for us.
It's
For
our
some people,
Achilles heel.
it's going to be their batteries. It just depends on who you are in the setup of your rig, the different tank configurations you have, and all that sort of stuff. So you want to know what that is for you, and you're trying to minimize the use of that thing as much as possible. Often, if we're going out and about and visiting lots of areas, we won't be using the black tank quite as much because we'll be using public restrooms while we're visiting town or whatever. And we're comfortable leaving the rig behind in most places.
Yeah.
Um, just as comfortable as we are in a campground. You're just as exposed in a campground. There's just as much opportunity, if not more, for people to steal stuff from you in a campground. Of course, you want to be safe, but we're pretty comfortable leaving the rig behind as long as
Yeah.
we close it all up, lock it up, put everything inside.
There's a brewery right up the hill. We're in town within 3 minutes. There are other boondockers in the area. We feel very comfortable here.
There's an argument that the further away you are from town, the safer your stuff is because
Sure.
there aren't the people nearby to come steal from you, right?
Absolutely. So again, it's all about knowing your comfort level and it's all about knowing what your positives are with boondocking for your rig and what some of your limitations are. Like Jason said, ours is for sure the black tank, but that is because we showed up here on Sunday afternoon and outside of leaving one time to go have pizza in town last night, we have been here the whole time. And we have been working and doing school and living life. And so we have been using everything that the rig has to offer 24/7 for the last basically 5 days. So for us to have made it that long with the black tank, I'm actually really quite impressed. We seemed to be able to manage our water and our tanks quite well. So that we know is our limitation. Of course, things to consider when you're boondocking is you do have to pack out all your trash. There will be no trash cans around. There aren't, sometimes there might be like if you're dry camping, on maybe a federal land or something and it is dry camping or, I think LT, what is it like out in Quartzsite, like you're boondocking out there and they do have trash. Most of the time, you're not going to have those kinds of facilities. So keep that in mind. You're going to need to pack out your trash. Again, we always think about limiting the use of the dishes so that we're not washing dishes all the time. What are the meals that are best for that? We've already talked about that. And then we we feel very, very, very strongly about this. And we had a really good discussion about it that I wish all of you could have heard earlier. And that is never, ever, ever. And I've even written this in the notes. Never, ever, ever, in all big caps, dump any black or gray water on the ground when you are boondocking. If your tanks are full, you need to leave and go
Now,
dump them.
a lot of people have questions about this, and a lot of people don't understand, and that's fine that you might not understand.
Absolutely.
They think, okay, why is the gray water any different than like a tent camper taking a shower outside or rinsing their dishes outside? So first of all, those tent campers are supposed to scrape all of the little scraps of food, throw them in the trash, and only rinse dishes as need be. and they're supposed to disperse the water. If you brush your teeth outside, you're supposed to spit the water all sorts of different directions. There are lots of things that you're supposed to do.
Never washing your dishes in the same place. You're never brushing your teeth in the same place if you're a tent camper. You're never doing anything in one area that over time can begin to alter the land.
When you drain the gray water from an RV, you've got like 70 gallons or something like that, and it's going everywhere. It's altering the landscape. Not only that, the water from your sink is not technically legally gray water. If it has food scraps in it, and don't tell me
Yeah.
there's no food in your gray tank, because I
I
hear people say this all the time. I never let any food go. You mean you never cook anything wet? Never anything with a sauce that you rinse out of a pan, anything like that at all? Like literally, you wipe every single drop and every single crumb goes into the trash.
There's just
It's if that's the case,
I
you're
need to
using
see
your RV wrong.
I need to see the forensics on this. I need to
But
I need to see it.
but it's not just about that. Yes, is it going to be, is the land going to be okay if somebody drains some water out? Probably. It's not about you. It's not about one person. It's about all of us. It's about the thousands of people that will visit this one site this year. If
Mhm.
it was the norm for us all to dump our gray water on this land, they wouldn't allow us to use it anymore.
Yeah.
And the way I like to put it is that if it's not something you would want somebody to pull up, not a friend, just some random person to pull up in front of your driveway,
Or in your
in
yard.
front of your yard, and empty out onto your yard.
40 gallons of gray water.
If you wouldn't be really, really angry about that, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah. If
And
you're comfortable with me showing up with the Sabre 37 RV miles and just opening up my gray tank right there in your backyard, in your garden, in your home, because this land is home to many habitats. If you would be comfortable with me doing that, then, there's probably not a conversation for us to have with one another, but that is the idea. This is our collective backyard. This is our collective front yard. This is a place where we are leaving it better than we found it, not only for the next person that's going to park right here, but for the next person 10, 20, 100, 200 years from now that is going to come here. Like we are leaving land as close to as we found it as humanly possible. And that includes too, not only with your tanks, but burning of your trash in a fire ring. So someone that was here before us, they burnt their trash. Clearly, there's a lot of metal can pieces and things like that in there still, and a lot of ash. We are cleaning that up and taking it out with us because burning trash is also not good to do to the land when you're out boondocking.
yeah, I mean, is it a big deal to throw a paper plate or a couple paper towels into your fire pit? No, but when you're burning literally all your trash, there's all sorts of fumes and stuff there. And then the ash that gets left behind just has all kinds of stuff in it. Again, would you be happy with somebody leaving that ash in your yard?
Burning trash in your yard. I mean, so this is not us trying to, be elitist or us trying to tell you what to do, but this is really coming from a place of care for these special places that we all get to discover across this beautiful country.
This is a drinking water reservoir, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is going to go to people's houses
Yes.
eventually. So dumping my gray water here is just a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, so we just want to be mindful and really want to reiterate the importance of making sure that we're not doing harmful things like that in any campground that we are staying at, but especially when we are boondocking. So that is our discussion on boondocking. We would certainly love to hear your tips and your tricks and your thoughts about what we shared and how you feel about boondocking. Are you seasoned? Are you new? Have you been concerned to try it? Was it everything you wanted it to be, or was it not at all what you thought it would be? We would love to hear those things. You can share them on YouTube with us. You can come over to the RV Miles Facebook group. You can share it there. Or if you want to have this conversation in, face to face in real life, these are the kinds of conversations we have when we host events, when the high desert hangout. We've alluded to that a couple of times because it was such a great conversation on boondocking last weekend with everyone. We'll probably do this conversation again at homecoming. These kinds of conversations, when we do them, they're not just us.
No, in fact, we get lots better tips from other people.
Yes. The last thing we call them group discussions when we do them, because really the last thing we want to do at these events is listen to the two of us talk. Like, we listen to ourselves talk like several times a week. We very rarely get the pleasure of hearing what you in real life have to say about the things that we do as RVers. So we love these seminars because they give us an opportunity as a group to do this. And so we will do this again at homecoming, and homecoming takes place September 24th through the 28th. We're also bringing back our RV consumer advocacy roundtable discussion where, we're all going to come together and we're going to have a group discussion. Jason will facilitate it, but we're going to talk about what is and isn't working in the RV industry for us. There's a lot of change happening right now. So this is a conversation I think that the RV industry needs to hear. And we certainly were able to take a lot of stuff we learned in 2024 from all of you and share that with them. So we're going to have these group discussions. They're an important part of every kind of event that we host. Not only do we get a lot out of it personally, but it's just really nice to be able to sit around and talk about something we all collectively love. So if you want to join us at homecoming, tickets are already on sale. It's September 24th through the 28th in Amana, Iowa. We would love to have you. There's going to be a ton of stuff going on. But, just to harken back to the gray tank here, there's full hookups at this event, and they're only $35 a night for your campsite. You can dump your gray tank to your heart's content. You can let the black tank stay open if you like, even though we don't recommend you do that. You can just enjoy all of the full hookups, and you can also enjoy the community of other RVers as well. So just go over to rvmiles.com/homecoming to learn more. We would love to meet you in Amana in September.
If you're interested in boondocking, just try it out. Just do it in your
Please
driveway. Do it at a local park. Go to a campground and just don't hook up to everything. And then if you have a problem, you can hook up. Then you can go out and try it for a night or two. And then you'll work up to being able to do it for a week, and then just going to a campground to get the power and dump the tanks and dump your trash and shower and all that stuff before you do it for another week again.
All right, it is time to check the level of our tanks. And we all know that the black tank over here in Boondocking Land is a little full, but and as always, this is sponsored by our friends over at Liquefied RV, the no BS toilet treatment. We actually have some liquefied in our black tank right now, and they are still giving away that Alliance Delta travel trailer. You just go over to liquefiedrv.com to learn more. Okay, Jason, what is in your precariously full black tank?
Integra Coach.
Ruh-roh.
Class A RV brand. We've talked to lots of Integra owners that have been very happy with them. Integra is under the Jayco umbrella, which is under the Thor Industries umbrella. And we've talked about some changes in the RV industry lately. Heartland and its subsidiaries, Cruiser RV, DRV, moved under the Jayco umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly, lots of people were let go. And those brands seem like they're going to still exist, but be manufactured in Jayco plants. What we're seeing right now is consolidations, reductions in workforces, moving people around, stuff like that. Integra Coach, it sounds like, is going to be moved to Tiffin. Tiffin is also a brand that was purchased by Thor a few years ago. So it's still under the Thor brands. But the manufacturing is going to move to Alabama, where Tiffins are made. And the press release about this is sort of making it seem like, there's some positivity here where where the fine folks at Tiffin are going to manufacture the Integra coaches, and sure, I mean, the folks at Tiffin are are good people and great workers and all that. However, I think this is really just a way of saying we're laying off a bunch of people in Indiana,
Yeah.
and not a lot of people are buying Tiffins right now. So we're going to make the Integras down in the Tiffin factory as well.
Well, I would guess too the flip is that a lot of people aren't buying Integras right now
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
These
It's
are
well,
very expensive Class A motorhomes.
RV sales are generally down, but Class A motorhome sales are way down. So there's a lot of hurt going on there. I'm hearing also about very extended shutdown of Class A motorhome manufacturing at Winnebago in Forest City, Iowa.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff going on there, but that's a big transition for Integra to move new states and have a
Yes.
whole new team manufacturing them.
Yes.
I think that changes a lot for the Integra fans, which there are a lot of that people that are really happy with their Integra coach and being in that sort of system and the way they've been treated by the manufacturers. Maybe some that aren't happy. I don't know.
Well, every
Um,
brand has people
yeah,
that are really happy with it and who
yeah,
aren't happy with it, and people who are in the middle. It doesn't matter what you purchase.
yeah.
That's every consumer.
So more sort of consolidation happening within the RV industry, which I think is needed in some cases, but in other cases, I'm like, okay, well, let's just not have that brand anymore. You
Yeah.
know what? We have so many brands. Why?
Well, like you said, there's a lot of loyalty to Integra,
Yeah.
just as there's a lot of loyalty by some to Tiffin. So, and in my mind, those kind of sit up there at the top of the Class A luxury, Class A makers. So I could see the hesitation in wanting to wipe that off. And maybe this is a bit of a Hail Mary to try and save the Integra name,
Mhm.
and keep manufacturing under that name. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a painful transition. And I could be very apprehensive as a consumer to buy an Integra for the next couple of years. I suspect there will be some bugs and some growing pains of moving. I don't know
Well,
how many people from
the
Indiana they're going to take with
the
them. That's
curiosity I have is, okay, well, how different will Integra be from Tiffin now? Will they be
well, sure.
basically just rebranded Tiffins?
Were they really that different to begin with?
I mean, yeah, I think they were in a lot of
I
ways.
mean, that was a real question. That wasn't me
Yeah,
being like,
I mean,
snotty. I was
there's still a
asking.
Class A motorhome, like, but
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time like in the
yeah,
Class A luxury motorhome world, so
yeah.
I, d- I don't really
Is the
know.
equipment that they install on them all that different? Probably not, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But it is sort of a
Oh,
consolidation that we're going to see a lot more of coming down the road.
and speaking of coming down the
Ooh, yeah,
road,
we got like some sort of custom
coming
overland rig coming
overland
down the road.
rig. Hello. Where are you gonna go? No, don't go that way. Come down here. Okie dokie. Anyway, that's boring for all of you. All right, Jason, but interesting for us. You can tell we haven't had a lot of action around here. We're like, oh, neighbors. All right, Jay, what is in your fresh tank this week?
Dometic is a company that makes a lot of products for RVs, mostly things like uh, sinks and air conditioners and notably furnaces. They have come out with a new RV furnace. There hasn't been a lot of advancement in the technology behind your base RV furnace. There are other options out there like the sort of in-floor stuff, but your base RV furnace hasn't really changed much over the years. And we've seen in recent years a lot of changes in RV air conditioners. So I'm really interested in the fact that they have found a way to change up the RV furnace a little bit. They're calling it the 35K Essential Furnace. So this is going to be the furnace that is chosen by manufacturers to put in as the sort of base level furnace that goes in a lot of RVs out there. And Dometic says two really notable things about this furnace that are great, solves to some of the problems a lot of us have with RV furnaces. One, it's supposed to have 22% better airflow because it has a redesigned fan and burn chamber sort of situation. So more airflow, of course, is better. One of the biggest problems with ducted RV furnaces is that the ducts that are furthest away from the furnace get just absolutely terrible airflow often. So an increase in airflow is great. The other thing is they've removed the most common failure point, the sail switch. RV furnaces have this thing called a sail switch
Oh, we're familiar with that, aren't we?
that you might have to clean off or replace. You have to pull your furnace apart and clean the gunk off it and replace it. And basically, it's a sensor. It's a little flag basically that clicks into place when the fan is moving because it's sensing the airflow.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the furnace doesn't want to turn on. It doesn't want to burn without the fan moving. That's why the fan starts and then you hear the click, 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 and then the propane starts.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't sense that the fan is moving, that you're not going to get the click, 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 and get the propane going and then eventually get it lit. So that sail switch would often get gunked up with whatever gunk and fail. And either you could try to clean it off, but often you just need to replace it eventually. And that's the most common problem that I know of with RV furnaces. There are a few other ones, but they've been able to eliminate the sail switch. They have some other way of sensing, some much better way, they say, of sensing the way that the airflow happening in your furnace so that you don't have that major failure point.
Who knew we could get so excited over a furnace? How fun is that?
I think it's great.
I know you do. I'm happy for you.
All right, what's in your black tank this week?
So my black tank and my fresh tank go together, and we're going to talk about the state of laundromats for a little bit here, okay? So I'm back on the road, people. I'm back in the laundromat. My black tank goes to right now the laundromat that you don't find in the campground, but the offsite laundromat. So I black tanked to the laundromat in Colville for basically making me spend almost $50 to do my laundry at this laundromat. They know they're the only laundromat in town. They know it. They know that the closest laundromat with the big dryers, like I could have done it at, so this was my mistake. I could have done it at the campground, but I had about what equated out to 8-9 loads of laundry. And I really don't like to take up all of the washers and dryers in a campground. And the campground we were at only had 4 washers, 4 dryers. I also didn't want to spend my whole day doing all of this laundry. So I said, okay, I'm going to go off site and I'm going to go to a laundromat. So I went to a laundromat. They were charging $10 to use the big, like not the big ones. I've paid more than this for like the big, like 8-loader ones. No, this was like $10 for like the 4-loader. Cause I think it goes like 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, and then it's all the way up. Like, then you're getting like your big 8 ones. So I ended up having to take up multiple of these to get all this laundry done. By the time I got out of there, it was $50, which I was super frustrated with because I was like, well, I could have stayed at the campground and this would have been like half the cost and whatever. And so just black tank to all these laundromats
I feel
out
like
there that are
sometimes
price gouging us.
it's like my experience, and you've done a lot more laundry at laundromats than me, but I've done a decent amount, and I feel like sometimes the extra load machines, the very big ones,
Yeah, they're kind of a ripoff.
the idea should be that it's a value that you're getting. It's more affordable per load, and you can fit more in.
No.
But often laundromats say it's an 8-loader when really it's a
Also,
5-loader.
You know, this one in particular, and I'm not going to call it all laundromats, but this particular one too was really price gouging. Like, oh, you could only use cold water, light soil, normal cycle.
You have to pay extra for hot water?
If you wanted hot water, it was 25 cents more. If you wanted to have like medium soil, it was 25 cents more. So every little extra cost, right?
Yeah.
So that's my experience with that one. That was super disappointing. So then we're here and I need to do laundry, and I was gonna drive into Jackson, and it was gonna be about like a half hour, 40-minute drive because I had searched in this area and I couldn't, no laundromats were coming up whatsoever. And so I popped into the grocery store because I wanted to buy some laundry detergent to make sure I had enough. And just on a hunch, as I was leaving, the woman who, like, the person that works there that'll like hang out around all the self checkouts in case you have a question, she was kind of there and she'd been really nice. We had chatted a bit and I decided to ask her. I said, "Hey, um, do you know if there are any laundromats here in the area?" I said, "I've only been able to get anything to pull up on the maps all the way up in Jackson." And she said, "Oh, yes, one of the RV resorts here, you can use their laundromat." And I said, "Oh, you don't have to be staying. You can go use it." And she said, "No, no, it's open to the public. They just have a sign on there that says, please make sure you're taking care of this or we would have to close it to the public." So I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I was like, "Well, I'll go over there and check." She said, "It's only quarters only, but here, I'm not supposed to give quarters out, but I'll give you the quarters we have in our drawer here at the store and you can go over there. I think they have a machine. You can get quarters." So I go over to this RV resort and it's, I use that resort term loosely. And I go over there, but they have a really big laundry area. They also, you can, purchase showers over there too, but they have a really nice large laundry area and they've got um 8 washers and 8 dryers. This is another like pet peeve of mine is when you have like 8 washers but then only 6 dryers. Like, come on. Like, what are you doing? Have enough dryers for enough washers. So I'm like, "Great. I can use like 4 or 5 of these without being a beep and taking all of this up." And it was quite affordable. And so it was $2 to wash and $2.50 to dry, which I know sounds expensive, but they also I didn't have to pay if I wanted extra hot water. I didn't have to pay for different cycles. They were long cycles. The dryer was $2.50, but it was 45 minutes. That other one in Colville only gave me 30 minutes on the dryer, which was not enough time to dry everything.
It's amazing the difference in lunch. Some of them are absolutely terrible. Some of them are just fantastic and a good value, and everything's clean, and they've got great staffs. And it just
Yes. And
depends.
while I was in there at this one here at the RV resort, a woman came in who was on staff and she cleaned that whole place. I wish I had shown up half an hour later because clearly I came in on cleaning day and it needed, a clean.
We
But she wiped all the machines down. She wiped all the dryers down. She mopped the floor. It was so spotless by the time she left. And when I did the math, I used 6 washers. So that came out to $12. And then I used 6 dryers. So that came out to $15. I spent under $30 to do all of our laundry and bedding in there, appropriate bedding in there. And I saved almost $20 on top of the other laundromat. And I think that that's
I
a
would
huge
bet
price swing.
I would bet though that a lot of the cost difference has to do with electric rates.
Oh, I'm
I bet they
sure.
pay a lot more for electric down there.
Rates.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a ton that
Yeah.
goes into it. I but I also feel, and I think some of this, and I don't have anything to back this up. This is just me shooting out a hypothesis. I think though that some of the laundromats that have the pay by card option are more expensive these days than the ones that just take quarters.
Oh, I'm sure they surely are, of course.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
that is part of it that like keeps the price going up.
Yeah, I mean,
And so
they're not only paying fees to Visa Mastercard, they're paying fees to the service that
right.
supplies the card machines and all
Yeah.
that.
And over here, all
Yeah.
you need is, a
Yeah.
change machine and you need to keep that stocked with quarters so people.
We have generally been very surprised though about this little town of Alpine,
I love it
Wyoming,
here.
and how
Great.
affordable everything is here.
Nice.
The grocery store is affordable. The pizza place we went to was very affordable. The drinks there were affordable, and we're heading very shortly to Jackson,
Where we will see
where
the
I know
change.
everything is very, very expensive, and it's only
Half an hour.
half an hour max
I mean, we're
down the
going to
road.
use this as our home base. We've really enjoyed Alpine, Wyoming a lot, actually. And so we decided that we would rather just kind of keep this as our home base and make the drive up to Jackson and up to the Tetons because we like it here so much. So,
Yeah, even
don't
if it's an
sleep on
hour drive to the
Alpine.
national park, that's okay.
I mean, that's an hour drive coming in from the gate at Yellowstone,
Yeah.
like just to get to Old Faithful. And we were staying right there. So, it's nice. We'll put on an audiobook. We'll be fine. But Alpine's really nice. If you find yourself coming this way, you should definitely stop. So that was my black tank, fresh tank mishmash with laundry. But I have a second fresh tank that is kind of keeping in my back pocket that I'm going to pull out here. I'm going to play this ace card. And that is because I'm very excited. This is really a community fresh tank, I think, too. I think both of us would say this is a fresh tank.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked and we have shared that the See America podcast is coming back. It's coming back with a new host. Our friend Brooks over at RV Out West podcast approached us several months ago about bringing See America back. And he was very passionate about it. And we were very excited about this idea. So on Memorial Day, May 26th, the very first episode after almost 4 years of being quiet, the very first new episode of the See America podcast will drop into podcast feeds, and we are thrilled that this is happening.
It's a show that we always loved. It was one of those things that we dropped because it was just too much for us. There was
Yes.
so much going on, and we had to sort of hone our focus in, but we've always wanted this space to bring it back.
Yeah.
And because we love talking about the national parks, we love talking about our RV travels, but there's something that's sort of wholly unique about road trip travel destination.
And Brooks has put together a fantastic 10-episode first season reboot that's going to have some really eclectic and exciting road trip destinations. And so we really hope that if you are a fan of this show or you enjoy the Parkography podcast, which formerly known as America's National Parks podcast, you will come over and you will join us on See America. It is going to be available on all podcast apps, the same place that you are listening to RV Miles.
In fact, it's there now. The old episodes are still there. It's been a long time since we've put an episode out, but if you want to go over to the feed now
and get caught
subscribe to it, and you could listen to some past episodes as well. But as long as you get there and subscribe, then you'll get the new ones when they come out.
We started doing that podcast in, I believe, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then
fall of 2019.
Fall of 2019, we closed it down in 2021. So there's a good number of episodes over there that you could just kind of go ahead and get the feel and the vibe of what See America is. So, but we're just really excited, and we just thank Brooks so much for seeing what we see in this little podcast and wanting to bring it back to life and letting us go on this journey, this road trip all together again. So it will not have a video version like you would see with our RV Miles or with our Parkography, but it's just going to be, it's old school podcasting. So just head over to a podcast app and subscribe to it. And the first episode will be in your feed on Memorial Day, the official kickoff to the road trip season.
That's it for this week's episode of the RV Miles podcast.
Take 2. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're enjoying RV Miles, will you do us a favor and will you just consider sharing it across your different social channels? If you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook or if you're just sitting around a campfire, would you just let people know that, hey, there's this RV Miles podcast and I really enjoy it. You can listen to it on a podcast app, or hey, let me pull it up on YouTube for you and you can subscribe and watch it there. That kind of word of mouth is just absolute gold for us because it's coming from you, the RVer, that we spend each and every week with. And so we really, really appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to do that. And of course, if you would like to spend more time with Jason and I and hang out with us in some of the different ways that we do with our mile markers, be that book club or our monthly get-togethers, or, we even do our extra podcast, or Jason does the on-ramp newsletter, and all these things, you can become a mile marker, and all that money stays right here at RV Miles so that we can continue to create the content that you enjoy week after week. And you can find that at rvmiles.com/mile markers. But until next week, friends, stay safe, stay healthy, go out there and boondock. It is truly a magical experience, and keep logging those RV miles.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.